The padlock snapped shut with a sharp clang, echoing like a prison door. There stood Karen Petton, draped in her neon-orange HOA vest, arms folded with the authority of a dictator guarding her kingdom. "You're not leaving without my written permission," she shrieked, her voice slicing through the morning air. Chains wrapped around my moving truck, locking me in like prey caught in a trap. When I tried to pull them loose, Karen shoved me backward, gravel digging into my palms. "These belong to the community now," she hissed, snatching my house keys from my grip. Then came the chaos. Landscaping stones whizzed through the air. Crack. A truck window shattered, spiderwebbing into jagged glass. My driver ducked down, terrified. "Ma'am, this is insane," I yelled. "I'm calling the police. You're stealing HOA property." Karen roared back, eyes wild with a fanatic gleam. But here's what she didn't know. My son Marcus works for the FBI. And what Karen had just done? It wasn't just petty neighborhood drama, it was a list of federal crimes long enough to put her away for years. So let me ask you, what would you do if your HOA incident went completely off the rails? Where are you watching this from, and what's your worst HOA nightmare? Drop it in the comments below. My name is Dalton Reed, 58 years old, contractor, widower, and apparently public enemy #1 in Meadowbrook Estates. 2 years ago, cancer stole my wife, Sarah. Since then, this house became nothing but a graveyard of memories. Her favorite coffee mug still sat on the counter. Her glasses gathered dust on the nightstand. Every corner whispered her absence. I couldn't breathe here anymore. That's why I bought a cabin near Lake Hartwell, Sarah's favorite fishing spot. She used to say, "We'll retire there someday." Well, someday came without her. Back when I first moved into Meadowbrook Estates 12 years ago, it seemed perfect. Gated luxury, manicured lawns, an HOA that promised to protect property values. My mortgage-free home should have been my ticket to peace. But then came Karen Petton. If a real estate agent ever mated with a prison warden, their offspring would be her. For 8 years, she ruled our HOA like a tyrant from her corner mansion. She measured lawns with a ruler, fined neighbors for Christmas lights that weren't HOA approved. She even charged poor Mrs. Samantha $50 once for planting yellow marigolds instead of regulation white. The thump sound of her measuring tape snapping open became the neighborhood's death knell. 3 weeks before my moving day, I did everything by the book. Paperwork filed. 30 days notice. No outstanding fees. Everything clean. Karen rejected it. Insufficient community impact assessment, she announced smugly at the board meeting. What does that even mean? I asked. You'll need a certified HOA transition consultant, she replied, flashing a shark smile. The cost? $2,500. The consultant? Her own sister, Brenda. This is extortion. I snapped. Karen tapped her clipboard, acrylic nails clicking like a ticking bomb. This is proper procedure, I refused. And that's when the revenge began. Overnight, orange cones blocked my driveway. Unauthorized relocation zone signs appeared like grave markers. Certified letters full of lies were sent to the seller of my cabin, claiming I was fleeing debts. Deals almost fell apart. Then came the Facebook slander. Dalton Reed is abandoning his community responsibilities. Dozens of angry reactions poured in. The betrayal burned worse than black coffee left too long on the burner. That night, my son Marcus called. Special Agent Marcus Reed, FBI Financial Crimes. Dad, this isn't just a HOA drama, it's harassment. Son, I can handle one overzealous real estate agent, I chuckled. What she's doing could be federal crimes, he warned. It's neighborhood politics, not the mafia. Sometimes, Dad, he said gravely, there's no difference. What I didn't know then was that my late wife, Sarah, had already begun uncovering Karen's corruption before her diagnosis. Hidden USB drives, bank records, irregular transactions. She died protecting this neighborhood from a predator in disguise. And Karen? She wasn't done with me yet. When I refused her demands, Karen shifted into full-blown extortion mode. Daily fines, threats of liens, she swore she'd bleed me dry until I bowed. That's when the puzzle snapped into place. This wasn't just about power. Karen was orchestrating something darker, a systematic theft ring disguised as HOA enforcement. Mrs. Samantha. I whispered, "Do you still have those papers?" She nodded, voice trembling. "They're in your kitchen drawer." "But Dalton..." "There's more. The Johnson's deck, the Martinez driveway, even old Mr. Frank's workshop. She's been stealing people's property piece by piece." Before I could reply, the sound hit wailing sirens. 2 squad cars roared into the neighborhood, their flashing lights casting a strobe of red and blue across the perfect suburban lawns. Karen instantly shifted gears. One moment the tyrant, the next a trembling victim. Fake tears. Shaking hands. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. This man is stealing community property." His accomplices threatened violence. Officer Martinez stepped out, his face betraying exhaustion, the kind of look reserved for HOA calls. "Ma'am, what exactly is being stolen?" Karen pointed dramatically. His mailbox. His house numbers. Secret HOA documents. "Sir?" Martinez turned to me. "Is this your property?" "Yes, officer." "Paid off mortgage, taxes current." "Here's the deed." I handed him the papers, still warm from my pocket. Karen sputtered like a broken sprinkler system. "But the HOA bylaws clearly state..." "Ma'am," Martinez cut her off. "HOA bylaws don't override state property law. You can't steal a man's mailbox." The second officer lifted Karen's cheap plastic zip ties, smirking. "Ma'am, did you attempt to restrain him with these?" Karen's chin lifted defiantly. "I was making a lawful citizen's arrest. For what felony you personally witnessed?" Dead silence. Her face went slack, eyes darting. She had nothing. The crowd was growing. Neighbors peered through blinds, kids pressed their noses to windows, the entire street buzzing with tension. My pulse thudded in my ears. I knew this wasn't the climax, it was just the opening. Act out. The cops left with a stern warning about false reports and harassment. Most people would have stopped there. Not Karen. At 2 a.m., my doorbell rang. And rang, and rang again. I stumbled downstairs in boxers, only to find her on my porch, clipboard in hand, flashlight strapped to her vest, dressed like a rent-a-cop from Party City. "Emergency HOA inspection," she declared. "Reports of unauthorized renovations require immediate investigation. Karen." It's 2 in the morning. Section 23C authorizes emergency inspections at any hour for safety violations. My blood boiled. I had helped draft those bylaws 12 years ago. No such section existed. "Get off my property before I called the police again," I growled. "I am the authority here." She screamed, her voice echoing across the street. Porch lights flickered on one by one, like a row of judgmental eyes. She tried to push past me into my home. "This is breaking and entering, Karen. This is community protection." She slurred, reeking of stale wine and her nauseating vanilla perfume. I slammed the door and dialed 911. Again. By sunrise. The escalation had taken a new form. 6 missed calls from the city building inspector. Karen had filed an emergency complaint about unpermitted structural modifications on my property. Inspector Rodriguez showed up at 8, a main clipboard in hand, professional but weary. "Mr. Reed, I need to investigate reports of deck alterations, electrical rewiring, plumbing work. He flipped through his notes. The complainant was very specific. I walked him around my property. The deck? Repaired years ago with permits. The electrical panel? Updated by licensed contractors in 2019. Everything was legal. After 20 minutes, Rodriguez sighed. Your permits are solid. This complaint? He paused politely. Is frivolous. While he packed up, Karen strutted from her house, oversized sunglasses glinting, clutching what looked like a police report. But she wasn't talking to him. She was shouting to no one. Officers. I need to file additional charges. She waved her papers in the air, addressing her mailbox as if it were a police officer. And the charges? My supposed thefts. Mailbox, $50. House numbers, $15. Garden hose, $30. My actual driveway? $4,880. My driveway? I shouted. Any deviation from HOA standards belongs to the community, she snapped. The woman had officially lost her grip on reality, but she wasn't done. That afternoon, my moving company called, panicked. Mr. Reed, we've received a cease and desist letter. Claims we're aiding criminal activity. Our insurance is threatening to pull out. From who? Patent Legal Services. I Googled it. Nothing. Karen had literally invented a fake law firm letterhead and all using Microsoft Word and her maiden name. And it worked. My movers were ready to walk. That evening, the nightmare peaked. I came home to find my locks changed. Shiny new deadbolts. Chrome handles. And a note taped to the door. Property secured pending HOA investigation. Access restricted by Community Protocol 15J. I was locked out of my own house. My neighbor Tom whispered nervously. She told us you'd been evicted for non-payment. Said the HOA owns your house now. Tom, I snapped. I own this place outright. No mortgage, no liens, nothing. But Karen's lies had taken root. $80 later, a locksmith let me back in. That's when I discovered she'd been inside. My medicine cabinet rifled through. Desk drawers tossed open. My home violated. And in her arrogance, Karen made her biggest mistake. On the counter sat a manila envelope I hadn't placed there. Inside, bank statements. Transfers from HOA funds into an account labeled Community Improvement Solutions, LLC. The same shady company run by her sister Brenda. Sarah's words echoed in my head. Criminals always hang themselves. With their own rope, Karen had just handed me the fin. The bitter taste of rage mixed with the sweet promise of justice as it hit me. Karen had just crossed the line into full-blown criminal territory. Multiple felonies. In one afternoon. Tomorrow I'd call Marcus. But Karen didn't wait for tomorrow. She went nuclear at dawn. When I opened my door, a lien notice was taped to it. At first glance, it looked official legal letterhead, stamped seals, the kind of paper designed to terrify homeowners. According to this document, I owed $15,000 in back. HOA fees and violations dating back to 2019, $15,000 for crimes that didn't exist. The list read like a work of fiction. $200 monthly landscape non-compliance fees, $500 quarterly architectural deviation penalties, and my personal favorite, $100 weekly community participation deficiency charges. My punishment for missing meetings while I cared for my dying wife. I called the county clerk's office. They confirmed what I already suspected. No lien existed. Karen was forging legal documents now. And she wasn't done. By noon, the phone rang. It was Child Protective Services. Mr. Reed, we've received a report about your son's mental stability impacting his federal employment. My blood froze. What report? An anonymous tip, the caseworker replied calmly. It claims your son, Marcus Reed, is psychologically unstable and poses a risk in his FBI position. Karen had gone after my son's career, his security clearance, his future. My son, a decorated federal agent. Minutes later, my real estate agent called, panicked. Dalton, the seller's spooked. Someone's spreading rumors you're under federal investigation for fraud. They're demanding proof you're not a fugitive before the cabin sale can go through. My reputation. My finances. My family. Karen was dismantling my life brick by brick. And then came the breaking point. Marcus called from D.C., his voice hard with barely contained fury. Dad, I just spent 2 hours with Internal Affairs. Someone filed a complaint accusing me of using federal resources for personal vendettas. They had detailed logs of my phone calls with you, my travel plans, even my searches about HOA law. She's stalking you, I whispered. They know it's garbage, Marcus said, but until the review's over, I'm restricted. Limited database access. She hasn't just crossed the line. Dad, she's tampering with federal law enforcement. That night, Karen played her final card. 8 p.m. A man in a cheap suit knocked on my door. Briefcase in hand. Mr. Reed, he said, I'm here to serve you foreclosure papers. Foreclosure? I own this house outright. Not according to these records, he replied, handing me documents stamped with fake seals and forged judge signatures. An attempt to strip me of my home with counterfeit foreclosure filings. These are fake, I told him flatly. You've just delivered fraudulent legal papers. His confidence faltered. The lady gave me $50. Said it was legitimate. Congratulations, I said coldly. You're now an accessory to federal mail fraud. The man practically ran to his car. I photographed everything and immediately called Marcus. Save those papers. Dad, Marcus said, his voice steady but sharp. That's mail fraud. Aggravated identity theft for the seals. Wire fraud if she used phone or email. And I know she did. How? I asked. Because I've already been tracking her, he replied. That process server called me before he showed up. I've got Karen's phone number, her email, even her payment trail. For the first time, I realized Marcus wasn't just defending himself. He'd been 3 steps ahead all along. Marcus, I said, she's ruining your career. No, Dad, he corrected. She's destroying her life. He pulled her record from federal databases. Karen Pettin wasn't just an unhinged neighbor. She was a serial scam artist. HOA scams in 3 other states, each time vanishing before charges stuck. A professional con woman hiding behind fake authority. And Sarah, my late wife, had seen it long before I did. The night air carried jasmine from Mrs. Samantha's garden as I sat on the porch, stunned. Karen had made her final, fatal mistake. She had threatened the family of a federal agent. Tomorrow, it wouldn't just be my fight anymore. It would be Marcus's too. The next morning, he arrived from D.C., briefcase in hand, wearing the grim mask of an FBI agent on official duty. Dad, he said, we need to go through Mom's files. All of them. Her office was a shrine I hadn't touched since her death. Her reading glasses still sat where she'd left them. Marcus went straight to the filing cabinet. Mom was meticulous, he said. If she found financial irregularities, she documented everything. The bottom drawer was locked. I'd never noticed before. Where would she hide the key? Marcus muttered. I knew instantly. Her jewelry box. She always said the most valuable things should stay together. I lifted her wedding ring, and underneath was a tiny brass key. Inside the drawer lay Sarah's secret investigation. Folders organized by year. Bank statements highlighted in yellow. Her handwriting covering the margins. And at the bottom, one envelope marked in bold, unmistakable letters. Karen, Federal Crimes. My hand shook as I opened it. Jesus. Marcus breathed. Sarah had documented everything. The fraudulent HOA election. The stolen funds. The shell companies. The money laundering. The proof that Karen wasn't just power drunk, she was running a criminal empire. And Sarah had left us the map to burn it all down. Karen knew I was poking around. She tried to buy my silence the coward's way, offering to help cover my cancer treatments if I'd stop asking questions about where HOA money was going. When I refused, she smoothed her voice and said it would be tragic if anything interfered with my care. She used Sarah's sickness as a shield for her crimes. The thought still makes my skin crawl. There's more, Marcus said, voice low and hard. He unfolded a letter from the state attorney general dated 3 months before Sarah died. Sarah had filed an official complaint. The state had been opening an investigation into HOA fraud just as she became too sick to follow through. Cancer stole her strength, but not before she left a trail. Marcus pulled up. Karen's history next. Phoenix, Denver, Tucson. A string of communities where complaints dissolved when she vanished, convictions that fizzled, charges dropped, victims left holding empty promises. Karen Pettin was not a neighborhood eccentric. She was a serial HOA scammer, a professional who preyed on people's trust. Then Marcus dropped the kicker. The cabin I'd been buying was entangled in the same scheme. Through shell companies and straw buyers, Karen had played the long con, force owners out, snatch property cheap through proxies, and launder stolen money back into real estate. My move would trigger an audit she couldn't afford. That explained the sabotage, the threats, the frantic attempts to stop my closing. I held Sarah's investigation file like a relic. My wife had died protecting our neighbors from a predator. She documented everything: ledgers, notes, suspicious transfers, enough to send Karen to the federal pen. Mom left us a roadmap, Marcus said, spreading the folders across my kitchen table like a battlefield plan. We follow this, we take her down. No sooner had he said it than Mrs. Samantha knocked at the door, with a plate of cookies and a folder that felt like a small book. I was hoping you'd ask for help, she said, easing into Sarah's chair. She revealed spreadsheets that would make a CPA weep. Every HOA transaction since 2019 mapped against actual community work. Glaring discrepancies. Hundreds of thousands unaccounted for. I'm a retired IRS auditor, Mrs. Samantha told Marcus, calm as a courtroom. 42 years chasing cheats. This is textbook laundering. Marcus's face lifted into a grim grin. Mrs. Samantha, he said, you just became our star witness. Then the neighborhood stepped forward. Janet Morrison, the long overdue board vice president, arrived with others. Apologies mixed with courage. They brought paper, fake assessment notices, invented violations, cash collected for fines that never existed. Stories poured out: $500 for an imaginary fence height violation, $300 for a mailbox color. Hush money paid in envelopes to avoid the hassle. As they pooled their evidence on my back porch under Mrs. Samantha's jasmine, the picture snapped into focus. This wasn't petty meanness. It was systematic extortion. Marcus walked us through federal logic. Interstate activity equals federal jurisdiction. Karen's shell companies cross state lines. The pattern of fake invoices, repeated vendor payments, and identical monthly transfers screamed organized theft. Mrs. Samantha's audit revealed the method. A fixed monthly transfer, $2,847 flowing into community improvement solutions. The number alone wasn't random. It was deliberate, kept just under the $3,000 bank reporting threshold. Karen knew where to bury the money and how to keep the books tidy enough to fool casual inspection. Marcus coordinated quietly with his field office. Motion cam footage, time-stamped recordings, bank copies, every piece of evidence stacked into something federal agents respect. Karen's antics, nighttime patrols, threats, fake paperwork were now audio-visual proof. The reporters came when Tom called the tip line. Channel 7's investigative team had been tracking similar HOA stories statewide. This could open into a multi-city takedown. Forensic accounting laid out the pipeline: steal HOA funds via ghost invoices, deposit into a fake vendor, transfer to a Delaware shell, buy distressed property, flip for clean money. Contractors came forward with unpaid invoices, $47,000 worth of labor never paid. The scheme had teeth: unpaid contractors, laundered cash, and a web of shell entities. Karen's kingdom was crumbling, and panic made her reckless. That week, her desperation stopped being petty and started being criminal. Tuesday night, the cameras caught her breaking into my house again. This time she wasn't poking around. She was planting evidence. There she was on the footage, all black, moving like a suburban ninja, sliding a credit card through the back door lock, jimmying it open. She crept past the kitchen, slipping small Ziploc bags into the garbage disposal and behind the fridge. White powder inside. Pure setup. I called the police immediately. By the time they arrived, she'd vanished, but the bags stayed, and so did the questions. Officer Martinez ran a field test. "Looks like baking soda," he said flatly. "Someone's playing games." Wednesday morning, the sabotage turned violent. All 4 tires on the moving truck were slashed, deep, deliberate cuts that left shredded rubber scattered like confetti. A note tucked under the wiper read, "Thieves don't get to escape justice." The driver swore he'd been offered $5,000 to lose the entire shipment between here and the cabin. $5,000 to ruin my life. Karen was bleeding money to stop me. Thursday, the harassment crossed into federal territory. Marcus called from D.C., voice tight. "Dad, she called my supervisor again. This time she's accusing me of misusing FBI databases for personal revenge." Marcus' boss dismissed it as nonsense. But each false allegation forced internal affairs to open files, paperwork that could bury him in bureaucracy. Karen had crossed a dangerous line when she phoned the FBI's public corruption hotline and accused Marcus of taking bribes. False reports against federal agents trigger automatic investigations. "She just committed a felony trying to frame me," Marcus said quietly. She'd tripled down on criminal exposure. Friday brought her most brazen stunt yet. A process server in a suit had my door with a sealed packet, a federal restraining order, complete with embossed seals, a judge's signature, and a case number that looked real at first glance. The paper had authority written all over it until I checked the details. Wrong court format. Misspelled judge's name. Non-existent address. The server's confidence evaporated when I told him it was forged. He'd been paid to hand-deliver fake federal orders. She was recruiting civilians into her lies. Meanwhile, Mrs. Samantha's digging turned up a pattern of bribery. Karen had tried to bribe the mail carrier to delay my mail, offered the garbage crew money to skip my pickup, even tried paying the pizza guy not to deliver to my house. It was petty economic warfare, a campaign of small cruelties designed to make me miserable. Then Saturday changed everything. Karen called the local FBI office and demanded they arrest Marcus for corruption. She spoke to Agent Williams, Marcus's supervisor, for 27 minutes. Per FBI protocol, the call was recorded. In it, Karen described in detail how she'd been photographing federal agents, tailing government vehicles, and monitoring communications between suspects. She confessed on an official line to stalking federal law enforcement officers and interfering with investigations. Marcus listened to the recording and laughed once, a short, incredulous sound. "She gave us a gift," he said. "Stalking federal agents is a federal crime. Interfering with an investigation is another." She confessed to both. Agent Williams, now personally invested, moved quickly. Nobody threatens his people's families without consequences. By Sunday, the vortex of lies had sucked in the court system. At 6 a.m., Karen filed a county restraining order claiming I'd threatened to kill her with a crowbar, an invention so grotesque it read like fiction. By 8 a.m., sheriff's deputies were at my door serving papers. For the first time in days, I was legally ordered to stay 500 feet away from the woman who had stalked and sabotaged me. "We're just serving papers," Deputy Johnson said, apologetic. The judge had to issue a temporary order based on her affidavit. I handed over security footage proving I'd been nowhere near her. "Save it for the hearing," he said. Legally binding, even when it's a lie. Then Karen tried to silence our star witness. At 9 a.m., Immigration and Customs enforcement called with an anonymous tip about Mrs. Samantha's citizenship. My stomach dropped. Mrs. Samantha has been a naturalized citizen for 40 years. Still, anonymous tips require follow-up. Karen was weaponizing federal agencies against the woman who'd been building the financial case racist. Desperation dressed as paperwork, hoping to discredit the person most dangerous to her empire. By mid-morning, the exhaustion reached a new level of absurdity. Karen called the Capitol Police, accusing me of plotting a violent attack on her at the day's HOA meeting. For a time, federal authorities treated the report seriously until they realized who was making the allegations. Karen had spent the week dialing every agency she could think of, layering ridiculous claims upon ridiculous claims until every office had flagged her as a serial false reporter. At 11 a.m., a convoy of official-looking vehicles rolled up to my house. 3 men in suits with badges approached my door. My hand tightened around my phone. Everyone in the neighborhood craned their necks. This was the moment we'd been barreling toward, the culmination of a week where petty bullying metastasized into felonies. The camera lights on my porch blinked red. Inside, Marcus and I readied the evidence Sarah had left behind. Every desperate move Karen had made, planting drugs, slashing tires, buying false paperwork, bribing workers, filing phony liens, targeting federal agents, and finally confessing on a recorded line, had done what she never intended. She'd built a case out of her own panic. Her empire had begun to implode, and all it took was the truth, a few well-timed phone calls, and people who refused to be intimidated. Sunday's HOA meeting would be where the neighborhood's collective voice finally spoke. The restraining order, the FBI call, the ICE complaint, all of it would be exposed under the bright lights of accountability. Karen had gambled everything to stop us. She'd gambled wrong. Tomorrow the whole operation would unravel in public. The countdown to justice started now. My heart slammed in my chest when the men in suits flashed badges. "Mr. Reed, U.S. Marshal Service. We're here to execute a federal seizure warrant on this property." The words nearly knocked the air out of me. They handed over paperwork that looked airtight, claims of money laundering, tax evasion, seizure orders. But the devil is always in the details. Wrong case numbers. A judge's signature that looked traced. A seal printed with ink, not pressed in metal. "Gentlemen," I said, steady but cold, "these are fake." Their leader blinked. "Sir, we were hired by Pettin Legal Services." I let the silence hang. "That company doesn't exist. You're being used to commit federal crimes." The color drained from their faces. Real U.S. Marshals don't work for private law firms. These were glorified process servers duped into playing dress-up. "She paid us $1,500, their leader admitted, stammering. "Showed us court orders looked real. She just made you accessories to federal document fraud," I told them flatly. They practically sprinted back to their cars. By noon, the walls were closing in on Karen faster than she could patch them. The restraining order? Thrown out the moment the judge saw my security footage? ICE? They apologized to Mrs. Samantha after confirming her decades-old citizenship papers. The fake marshals? They reported Karen themselves to real federal authorities. And still, Karen doubled down. At 1 p.m., she staged a press conference in her driveway. Cameras everywhere. Karen in a conservative suit, fake legal files clutched in her hands like a shield. These people are criminals. She announced to the world, pointing at me, Marcus, and Mrs. Samantha. They've threatened my life, corrupted federal agents, stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from our community. Sarah Kim from Channel 7 asked the perfect dagger of a question. Mrs. Patton, can you provide evidence for these allegations? Karen's eyes gleamed with manic confidence. Yes, I have bank records, witness statements, federal documentation. She held up Sarah's investigation files, the very documents proving her guilt. These show systematic theft, fraud, and corruption. On live television, Karen Patton confessed to her own crimes while trying to frame us. Marcus, watching from his hotel, texted me one line. She just confessed on national TV. That night's HOA meeting was set to be her last stand. The Meadowbrook Estates Community Center had never seen such a crowd. Out of 127 homeowners, 89 showed up, a record turnout for a community once too apathetic to argue over Christmas lights. Reporters lined the walls. Cameras flashed like it was election night. Even Spanish-language stations sent crews. Karen strutted to the podium in her sharpest suit, stacking fake documents in front of her like weapons. Behind us, 3 silent men in suits observed. Neighbors thought they were journalists. I knew better. FBI. Ladies and gentlemen, Karen began, voice dripping with false authority. Thank you for attending this emergency meeting to address the criminal conspiracy destroying our neighborhood. She launched into a tirade. Theft, corruption, financial crimes. Every accusation pointed at me. Every word a mirror of her own sins. She flourished real bank statements. $200,000 stolen from HOA funds. Proof, she declared. But the account name printed at the top told the truth. Community Improvement Solutions, LLC, her shell company. Her confession. Karen, Board Vice President Janet Morrison stood. The board voted yesterday to remove you as president. Effective immediately. Karen's smile faltered. You can't remove me. I have evidence of corruption. Yes, Janet cut her off. We've seen it. All of it. That's when Mrs. Samantha stood, calm, unshakable. Karen, you offered me $5,000 to stop helping Mr. Reed. Gasps spread like fire through dry brush. That's a lie. Karen's TAMMERED. Mrs. Samantha pulled out her phone. Would you like me to play the recording? Karen's face went corpse white. Marcus rose slowly, letting his FBI badge catch the light. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, I am Special Agent Marcus Reed, FBI Financial Crimes Division, and I am here in an official capacity. The room froze. He turned, locking eyes with Karen. Mrs. Patton, you are under active federal investigation for multiple felonies, mail fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. Karen panicked. She bolted for the door like a rabbit sensing the hawk's shadow. But the men in the back row were already standing. Karen Patton, Agent Williams said, cuffs gleaming in his hand. You're under arrest. The metallic snap of the cuffs echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Cameras popped. Children pressed against windows to see. Karen shrieked, This is a setup. I'm the victim. But her cries were drowned by something she never expected. Applause. It started with Mrs. Samantha, then rolled through the entire hall. 89 homeowners standing, clapping, cheering as their tormentor was led away in chains. Agent Williams paused at the door, addressing the crowd. Mrs. Pettin faces 23 federal charges, including racketeering conspiracy. The theft totals over $347,000. All assets are being seized under federal forfeiture laws. Restitution will follow. Gasps, murmurs. Neighbors looked at each other in disbelief, finally seeing the full scope of her crimes. Outside, Karen was loaded into a black SUV, her empire collapsing in front of the cameras. Neighbors clustered around me, around Marcus, around Mrs. Samantha, offering apologies, thanks, and finally, solidarity. After years of terror, Karen Pettin's reign ended not with another threat, but with applause. Dalton, we should have listened to you years ago, Tom admitted, shaking his head. We should have believed Sarah, whispered Mrs. Patterson. The news cameras caught it all, Karen's perp. Walk-in handcuffs, the community's cheers, Marcus explaining federal fraud charges. But the most powerful moment came when Mrs. Samantha stepped to the podium. Sarah Reed died investigating these crimes, she said, her voice steady. She spent her last months gathering evidence to protect all of us. Tonight we got justice for Sarah. The room erupted in applause. And for the first time in years, I felt Sarah's presence like a warm embrace. Outside, red and blue lights lit up the night sky. Karen's empire had collapsed. 3 months later, I was back at my cabin, sipping Sarah's favorite coffee as the sunrise painted Lake Hartwell. No chains, no threats. No HOA tyrant claiming ownership of my life. Just peace. That morning's headline read, HOA fraud queen gets 8 years federal prison. Judge Martinez hadn't been swayed by Karen's tears. You victimized dozens of families while holding a position of trust, he ruled. Restitution, $520,000. Every stolen penny returned as refund checks. Her sister Brenda got probation. The fake consulting business was dissolved. Karen's luxury cars, seized homes, even her Escalade all sold to pay back victims. Meadowbrook Estates transformed. Mrs. Samantha became treasurer. The pool finally got built and long-delayed projects were completed with recovered funds. Marcus returned to D.C., hailed as the agent who cracked a multi-state fraud ring. Sarah's fight sparked national change. Sarah's law now requires CPA audits for large HOAs in Texas, and 12 more states adopted reforms. I launched the Sarah Reed Memorial Scholarship for Cancer Research. Her legacy was saving not just our community, but lives, and the ripple effect didn't stop there. HOAs across the country were exposed, corrupt boards dismantled, new protections passed. Even Tom, once Karen's supporter, became HOA president and promised, never again will one person control this community. Meanwhile, prosecutors in Arizona built a RICO case for Karen's past scams charges that could keep her behind bars for life. As twilight fell over the lake, I lifted my coffee mug toward the stars. We did it, sweetheart, I whispered. Your fight changed everything. Her greatest gift wasn't just exposing Karen. It was proving that ordinary people can take down corrupt systems when they stand together for truth. What's your worst HOA nightmare? Drop your story in the comments. You might be sitting on the next federal case that saves hundreds of families. Don't forget to hit subscribe to listen HOA stories. Because this fight isn't over, and we're just getting started exposing corruption, one story at a time.